Anyway, it's good to see all of you. Chapter 19 of Revelation. Chapter 19. This is one of the exciting chapters of Revelation to me, maybe not to you, but it is to me. But we got down, we're going to pick up in verse 17. We actually got to 19, but we're going to back up to 17 and pick it up there. And it says, and I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that fly in the midst of the heaven, come and gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great God. Now there's the Lamb Supper, the marriage supper of the Lamb, and then there's the supper of the great God. You do not want to be at the supper of the great God. You want to be at the Lamb Supper. All right? The supper of the great God is what the birds are going to feed on after Armageddon. Verse 18, that ye may eat the flesh of kings, and the flesh of captains, and the flesh of mighty men, and the flesh of horses, and of them that sit on them, and the flesh of all men, both free and bond, both small and great. And so this is the preparation now for the Battle of Armageddon. And we see that this angel is calling all the birds together, and they're going to be able to quote, pick the bones of all these great warriors. Now, what you're going to find out as we go through this is probably the most carnage of any battle that's ever been fought in the history of the world. And it's the most lopsided battle because all the lost, all those who follow the Antichrist are going to be killed, and those who follow the Lord are not. And so it's going to be a lopsided battle, but the carnage is going to be unbelievable. In fact, you probably remember reading that the blood will be up to the horses' bridles for a distance of 200 miles. How tall is the nation of Israel? 200 miles. So the nation of Israel will be flooded with blood from one end to the other. And we'll start up here in the Battle of Megiddo in this plain, this green area here, the flat ground, and go down probably along the Jordan River, into the Jordan River possibly, all the way down to the Dead Sea. So it takes a lot of people to have that much blood and horses. So, but that's what's going to happen. Now let's get to verse 19 and see what happens. And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse and against his army. Now what you notice about this, or one thing you notice about this, is that contrary to what normally happens in battle today, where are the generals today? Where are the battle leaders today? They're at the back somewhere. They're not up on the front lines. But here, the beast is going to be, or the Antichrist is going to be up on the front lines. Now, why would he be there? Now, remember what's going on. He's called all the armies of every nation on earth, other than Israel, to mass, and there's probably millions of soldiers, literally, and they're going to attack Jerusalem with the intent of total annihilation, or some will be taken into slavery, but primarily they're just going to annihilate the whole nation of Israel is what their intent is. Now, why do you think he's there, and why do you think he's going to be at the forefront? Why didn't he send other people in to do the battle or lead the battle? Where was he when the two witnesses in Jerusalem were killed? He killed them. Okay, he overcame them. And what happened? It was on television and internet, and everybody in the whole world could see it. Now, don't you think that he's going to want to be right up in the front here when he destroys Israel to take all the credit for it and to be, given all the glory by the followers of the Antichrist, his followers, and those people of the earth that he leads? He's not going to sit back somewhere and take it easy. He's going to be up there so they can see him. Things are not going to turn out just exactly like he hopes they will, but We haven't gotten there yet. So, saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat on the horse and against his army. Now, who is it that sits on the horse? Jesus, okay? We saw that last week. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet. Now, think about this from this perspective. You're in that army. You have seen this guy do miracles. You have seen the wisdom, quote, that he has and all that he does and how he's been able to conquer anybody and everybody that comes up against him. You have seen the fact that he had a mortal head wound and recovered totally from it. And so you've put your trust in him. You've taken the mark of the beast. And you go into battle. What are you expecting? You're expecting to be victorious. You're expecting him to lead you to a great victory. You're expecting to get, all kinds of good from that. And he's the first one taken. He's like a mouse and a big cat grabs him and just snatches him away, him and the false prophet. What goes through your mind?
Yeah, whoops.
We're in trouble.
The first thing is, and then it gets worse from there. But think about that.
Back away.
Now, some may fall down on their face and start crying out to the Lord because they realize at this point, I think, I can't, this is my impression. They realize that the one on the white horse that has millions of followers on white horses, and they're all dressed in white, and they can see, the Lord, and I think he'll be very identifiable when he rides in. And they realize this is the guy I've heard about. This is the Lord. This is God's Son. And so they hit the ground on their face and cry out for mercy. Others may turn and run, trying to avoid him. Well, like they say, you can run, but you can't hide. And then others may be bold and want to stand and, face him and all of that. Well, what's going to happen? Well, we have to go back to Zechariah to get a little detail. Zechariah is the next to the last book in the Old Testament. So if you're at Malachi, go left, and you'll find Zechariah just a couple of pages over. And I had a marker, and I moved it, now I can't find it. All right, here it is. All right, chapter 14 of Zechariah. Excuse me. Let me find my place here. Start in 12. And this shall be the plague wherewith the Lord shall smite all the people that have fought against Jerusalem. Now he's talking about the Battle of Armageddon, where we are today, in Revelation 19. Those who have fought against them. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, and their eyes shall consume away in the holes, and their tongue shall consume away in their mouth. Now, if you saw Indiana Jones and whatever it was, about the Ark of the Covenant and the Lost Ark, at the end where the Germans are going to open the Ark, and how they just kind of melt. Well, that's the picture that I get of what's going on here. And so it goes on then, and says in verse 13, it shall come to pass in that day that a great tumult from the Lord shall be among them. Who is them? The Antichrist's army, his forces. And they shall lay hold every one on the hand of his neighbor or his fellow soldier, and his hand shall rise up against the hand of his neighbor. What is that talking about?
Fight between themselves.
They're going to be fighting among themselves. You remember the story about Gideon? They went up on the mountain, they broke the lamps so their lights would shine, they started blowing the trumpets, and there were 300 of them, and the Midianites could not be numbered, there were so many. And remember where that happened? Valley of Megiddo, same place this is going to happen. And what happened? Gideon didn't even have to fight. They just stood up there and blew the horns and held the lamps, and they killed each other. And then when they started, the survivors started fleeing, then they started chasing them down. But same thing is going to be happening here, or except on a larger scale, apparently. And so verse 14 then says, and Judah also shall fight at Jerusalem. Now, who is Judah? Judah is another name for Israel. You remember back after the reign of Solomon, the nation split. And there was the nation of Israel, and then there was the nation of Judah, which was Judah and Benjamin, those two tribes. The Assyrians took over the nation of Israel, carried them back to Assyria in captivity in about 700 something BC, and they lost their identity. They just blended in with the Assyrians, and they lost their identity as a tribe. Now, the Lord still knows who they are, and there's still a lineage there, because we saw back, I believe it was chapter 6, that there's going to be 12,000 of each tribe who are going to be called out as evangelists during the tribulation period. So there is a lineage there, and it's a true lineage from all the 12 tribes, but they have lost their identity. They don't really know who they are. Judah has been able to keep some of its identity. Judah remained a nation until the Babylonians came in about 522, I believe it was, or maybe it was 5, I forgot the year, but it was 500 and something BC. The Babylonians came, took over Judah, or Judah and Benjamin, which was called Judah, the nation of Judah, and took them into captivity for 70 years, and then they came back and rebuilt the temple and rebuilt Jerusalem and all of those things in the succeeding years. But it says, Judah shall also fight at Jerusalem. So Israel and the people of Israel have been called home now. For several years they have been back in Israel. And when they get there, or when this time comes, they unite and begin to fight those who are in Jerusalem, those forces that have invaded Jerusalem already. And then you get a view of just after the battle. It says, and the wealth of all the heathen round about shall be gathered together, gold and silver and apparel in great abundance. Where did that come from? That's what they had already taken away from Jerusalem and from the Israelite people when they first attacked. So we get a picture of what's going on in the end there from Zechariah, who was an Old Testament prophet, but he was saying not the coming of the Lord, but the second coming of the Lord, and the Battle of Armageddon and all of that. So, and then if you remember, there was the reason that they got there. They didn't just say, well, let's go attack Jerusalem. Let's go attack Israel. Go back to chapter 17 of Revelation, and verse 16 of chapter 17. And we find out why they all ended up there. Chapter 17, verse 16, and the 10 horns which you saw upon the beast, these shall hate the harlot or the whore. Who is that? That's the false church, the false prophet, okay, the false religion, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. So there is a coalition of 10 of these kings or leaders, the 10 horns being a power, and they come together and they decide that they've had enough of the false prophet, and so they attack the religious system and the seat of religion at that point, and are attacking it. And then the Lord shows up, and all of a sudden they decide they better stick with the Antichrist, so they reform their coalition with him. You're still in chapter 17, go back to verse 12. And the 10 horns which thou saw are 10 kings which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. Now that's probably not one clock hour, but it is a very short time frame. A few days, few weeks, something like that. And during that time, that's what's going on. They're attacking the false prophet and the false religion, and then they make this coalition with the Antichrist. Verse 13 then, these have one mind and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. Where did they get the one mind from? Remember the three frogs that came out of the river? One entered the mouth from Satan, one from the Antichrist, and one from the false prophet. And they all convinced them. These were convincing speeches that were made, or pleas that were made for everybody to come together. And then verse 15, and he said unto me, the waters which thou saw, where the horse sits, are people, multitudes, and nations, and tongues. So there's usually, not every time, some of it's still a mystery, but there's usually an explanation of what symbolism is if you go a little farther into the scriptures. All right? So hopefully you're kind of getting an idea of what we're talking about today. Back over in chapter 19 now. Verse 20, we started there, and the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast. And that's the army, the ones who were following after them, and many others also. And them that worshipped his image. These both, the beast and the false prophet, were cast alive into the lake of fire burning with brimstone. Now, what's unique about that? They didn't go to the white throne judgment. They weren't judged by God when all the other lost are going to be judged. Because of who they are and what they've done and what they stand for, they go immediately to the lake of fire and brimstone. They will be there by themselves for 1,000 years before the great white throne judgment. So, they can put that on their resume. I was the first one into hell, or whatever. Not that they're going to need a resume, because that's it. They're over. They're done with it. And so think about that. That just tells you how evil these people are, and how they have misled an entire world, an entire population of the world. And then verse 21, and the remnant, who's the remnant going to be? This is not the remnant of Israel. This is the remnant of the army. All right. Were slain with the sword of him that sat upon the horse, which sword proceeds out of his mouth, and all the fowls were filled with their flesh. So this is going to be a battle like's never been seen before. It's going to be the carnage that has never been seen before. It's going to be so lopsided, because nobody on the Lord's side is going to die. Everybody on the other side is going to die. And so it's something that will only happen one time. All right? And then, of course, we talked about how Jesus is going to do battle. He's going to speak it, and they'll be destroyed. The army's going to fight with each other. They're going to have internal fighting and kill a lot of each other. And then Judah is going to fight, or the nation of Israel will fight and take back or reclaim Jerusalem. If you still got your marker there in Zechariah, go back to Zechariah chapter 12. Zechariah chapter 12. And go to verse 2. Zechariah 12:2. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, when they shall be in the siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. Now, what's he saying there? He's going to cause a very disconcerted feeling to come over this army, a cup of trembling when they're attacking Judah and Jerusalem. And in that day I will make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces. That's the army of the Antichrist. Though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. In that day, saith the Lord, I will smite every horse with astonishment, and his rider with madness, and I will open my eyes upon the house of Judah, and will smite every horse of the people with blindness. And the governors of Judah shall say in their heart, the inhabitants of Jerusalem shall be my strength in the Lord God of hosts, their God. In that day will I make the governors of Judah like a hearth of fire among the wood, and like a torch of fire in a sheaf, and they shall devour all the people round about, on the right hand and on the left, and Jerusalem shall be inhabited again in her own place, even in Jerusalem. So the Israeli people are going to rise up. The leaders are going to rise up. They're going to get the people to rise up, and they're going to battle. Now, read on in verse 7. The Lord also shall save the tents of Judah first, and the glory of the house of David and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem do not magnify themselves against Judah. In that day shall the Lord defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and he that is feeble among them at that day shall be as David. And what do we know about David? He was a great warrior, killed tens of thousands, according to the songs they sang about him. And he himself was never wounded and certainly wasn't killed in battle. And the house of David shall be as God, as the angel of the Lord before them. And it shall come to pass, verse 9, in that day that I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. And that's what's happening. That, according to Zechariah, is what's going to happen at the Battle of Armageddon. So, what's the application here? Basically, it's very simple. Are you ready for the rapture? Are you ready to be called home and go with the Lord? If you're not, then will you be ready for the second coming? And whose side will you be on? Will you be on the Lord's side when he comes? Or will you have taken the mark of the beast? And that's what our society has to decide today. And how are they going to know what they need to decide? We're supposed to tell them. That's our job now, is to spread the word, spread the gospel. And you say, well, I'll do that, but I need to wait a while. What we don't realize sometimes, we're living in the last days. It's either the last days before the Lord comes, or it's the last days that you have on earth. Because most of you are pretty old, I, on the other hand, still have a long way to go. But some of y'all are pretty well on up there. No, we don't know when our time comes. So we've got a job to do now, and that's to spread the gospel. We need to make sure we're ready first, and then help others find their way. All right, what did you see in chapter 19 that I missed? Or something we need to talk about? Bernie's here. She can answer any questions that you have, so she's got this thing down. Yep, Linda.
I've been reading, and I mentioned it before, because we had found all these books for the Left Behind. Mm-hmm. So I've been comparing what they've been saying to what we've been learning here, and then on some other Bible studies on my own. And so I thought, that's unusual, because I hadn't heard this one thing. And they had said something about in there, because they're trying to preach the gospel in the story as they're telling it. So, and they had said in there that during the tribulation, the 144,000 witnesses would come. And I had always thought that it would have been, that some of them had been taken back from the time of the prophets and stuff. So they were part of those 144,000 would already be in heaven. But you just got through saying that during the tribulation, that 144,000.
The 144,000 are called early in the tribulation, and God puts his seal on them, and they cannot be killed or nothing's going to happen to them. Now it will to other Israelites, but not to them until they finish their work. And their work is to spread the gospel across the world. And that's what they'll do. They'll go all over the world preaching. And there's going to be a lot of people saved during the tribulation. But as soon as they get saved, they come under the eye of, so to speak, of the Antichrist, and they begin to be persecuted. Some will be taken into captivity. Some will die. You remember the mark of the beast, you can't buy and sell. Well, if you're a Christian, you don't take the mark of the beast. If you don't take the mark of the beast, you starve to death. Or you can't get medication if you're sick, or they won't treat you at a hospital or things of that nature.
I not quite sure about the United Nations, but currently there's 5 major of the larger countries that's mostly in charge, and then there's smaller nations that are coming in, and they're part of the United Nations. And during the one world global, where they're trying to make one world government, that the smaller nations will gather together and they'll group up and they'll vote for certain ones to represent them, and it'll end up being the 5. So there would be 10 heads in the United Nations. That would be. We had talked about possibly.
There's all kinds of conjecture as to where the 10 horns come from. But remember, they are at the end of the tribulation, and they have a very short time of reigning. When the rapture comes, society and government and commerce is going to be thrown into such a tizzy that there's no telling what it's going to look like when it comes out on the other side. Nations that are nations now may be taken over by others. You know, the big ones may take over the little ones. I don't know. I ain't gonna be here. Don't care. But we need to realize some of the things that are happening now are setting us up and are being put in place, preparing for the tribulation. But we don't know what it's really going to look like. There will be nations that collapse. Strong nation will come over and take over other smaller ones, and they've been doing that ever since there's been nations, and it'll happen then also. So, but we know some things that are sure, some things we just kind of speculate, and that's basically, to me, is one of them. We don't know what the nations are going to be. Yeah. So, all right. Anything else? All right, go to chapter 20. And I know you all studied this, and you know everything, so I'll ask questions and you just answer them. Throughout the Bible, we have seen Jesus, and as we've seen him, especially prior to Revelation, we've seen him as a loving, forgiving, meek, sometimes, if you will, Son of God that came to serve, not to rule. In chapter 19, we see him come back as King of Kings, Lord of Lords, a great warrior. He's taken on a whole new persona when we get to chapter 19 of Revelation. But what is your vision of how the people on earth receive him when he comes back? And we're not talking about the army at the Battle of Armageddon, but the people who survive, the people who don't go to war. There's going to be children and teenagers and old people, that won't be at Armageddon. How are they going to receive him when he begins to rule? Are they going to see him as just and benevolent, or are they going to see him as hard-nosed and cruel?
It depends on what they were taught.
Okay.
And what they believe, as far as the children.
Okay. Turn back to Isaiah, if you will. I should have marked all this. Isaiah chapter 11. In Isaiah chapter 11, go down to verse 5. And Isaiah is telling us about the rule under Christ when he comes back and sets up his worldwide kingdom. And the righteous shall be the girdle of his loins, and the faithfulness the girdle of his reins. Now look how earth is going to be at that time in verse 6. The wolf also shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, and the calf and the young lion and the fatling will lie down together, and a little child shall lead them, and the cow and the bear shall feed, and their young ones shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like an ox, and the suckling child shall play on the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put his hand in the cockatrice den. And cockatrice, I think, means some type of viper or cobra type snake. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea.
That's during the 1,000 years.
Yes. Yes, this is during the millennial reign. Now, has the earth ever experienced that before?
In the Garden of Eden. Before.
Garden of Eden. That's the way it started out. So how did that turn bad? Satan came, and, met up with a woman who influenced her husband. And that's as far as we're going with that. Now, you know how sin entered into the world. And the sin entered, according to the Bible, not by Eve, but it entered by Adam. And why is that? Eve took the first bite.
Because Adam was in charge of Eve, and he should have.
Eve was not told not to eat. Adam was told not to eat.
So it was a man.
So, guys, we got to take the hit on that one. But anyway, you get a picture of the peace when wild animals will lay down with domesticated animals and not, have a problem. I think we saw a picture of that also on Noah's Ark. I think the lions and the carnivores ate hay or grass or whatever they loaded on for the herbivores and all that kind of stuff. So, but that's how it's going to be for 1,000 years. Then go back to chapter 2 of Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 2 and begin in verse 2. And it shall come to pass in the last days, and that's what we're talking about here, that the mountain of the Lord's house shall be established in the top of the mountains, and shall be exalted above the hills, and all nations shall flow unto it. And what does it mean by that? When all nations flow unto it, it means that they're going to be, and we'll see this later when we get further into chapter 20 and 21, we'll see that they are going to be, all nations will come to the Lord and will come to honor him and bow down to him and all. So that's what that's talking about. And Isaiah foresaw this hundreds and hundreds of years ahead of time. Verse 3, and many people shall go and say, come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us his ways. And we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion, and Zion is Israel, okay, shall go forth the law and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. So his headquarters, capital, if you will, is going to be in Jerusalem. And he shall judge among the nations, and shall rebuke many people, and they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. So it's going to be unexperienced peace for 1,000 years. Now, how is that going to come about other than the fact that the Lord is in control? Well, go to chapter 20 now and look at verse 1. And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years.
What, that was Isaiah 20?
Revelation.
No, Revelation 20.
Threw me off.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Revelation 20, verse 1 is where we started. We're on verse 3 now. And cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled, and after that he must be loosed a little season. So when you take Satan out of the picture, then you get the things that Isaiah wrote about, the peace on the earth, when you take him out of the picture and when you let the Lord reign. Now, chapter 20 follows chronologically after chapter 19. You remember back early in Revelation, sometimes you'd have a chapter jump way ahead and then it'd come back to it, and it was, some of it was kind of jumping around. But this is in chronological order here. And so the first thing that's going to happen is God is going to send an angel. Now, it doesn't say an army of angels, just one. Some people may think it's Michael, but he's not named. We don't know who he is. But he's going to be quite an angel, because he's going to be able to single-handedly arrest Satan and cuff him and stuff him, all right, into the abyss. That's police talk. Okay, never mind. All right. Don't believe all that stuff. Believe the Bible, not all that stuff. All right. Now, we don't know who this angel is, and if somebody speculates, that's all it is, speculation, so don't worry about it. Now, notice that the Bible in verse 2, he doesn't just say Satan or the devil, but he names him 4 things. He laid hold on the dragon, the old serpent, the devil, and Satan. Why was he so specific about the identification? Now, one thing is there should be no question as to who we're talking about. But the other thing is each one of those names means something. When he calls him the dragon, this is the name we saw him get back in Revelation 12 when he was trying to destroy Jesus at the moment of his birth. Remember, he talked about the dragon waiting on the woman who was with child to have the child so he could kill him. Well, what was really happening is when Jesus was born, and you know this, that Herod, who had been told by the wise men who came from the east, at Christmas time, because you always see them, at Christmas time. That's the only time they come around. But they came and brought gifts for the young child, but they stopped at Herod's place and said, "Where is this king?" They thought obviously he'll be there in the palace, but he wasn't. And so they find him because of God's direction with the star. And what did Herod say when they left? "When you find him, you come back and tell me so I can go worship him." Well, they didn't come back. And when he realized that, what did he do? He had all the male children 2 years old and under, just to be sure that he got him. All of them were slain. And the Romans sat there and watched it. They didn't say anything. They didn't care if the Edomite killed the Jews. That's no big deal. So this was that type of him trying to kill Christ in the beginning of his earthly life. Yeah, Sandy?
I think it's interesting to remember that during the time of Israel's captivity in Egypt, that the same thing happened.
Yes.
That introduces Moses.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Satan looking for the deliverer of Israel. And it's the same thing here.
Yeah, so, the Pharaoh decreed all male children should be killed at birth. And they didn't just kill them, they threw them in the river with the crocodiles. And, but they were afraid that there were going to be too many Israelites, that they were going to be overrun by the Israelites. And so that's why they were trying to kill them off. But here, Satan is trying to actually get rid of Jesus at his birth. Well, that didn't work. But that's why he calls him the dragon. Then he called him the old serpent, or serpent of old. And that is because he's deceitful and cunning in everything that he does. He started that with Eve in the Garden of Eden, and he has not quit yet. He's a treacherous person, and he takes God's words and he twists them around and he makes them say things that they don't mean. But people do not read the Bible. They do not understand, what they are hearing, and so they accept a lot of this as false prophet or false prophecy, if you will. And then he calls him the devil. And this refers to his slandering and his accusations against believers. And you can read about this in Revelation 12:10. But John chapter 8 in verse 44 gives us the real information about the devil. John 8:44. Just one verse, I'll read it to you, but you can turn there if you'd like. Now, in my Bible, this is in red. So what does that mean? It's the Lord speaking. He only spoke in red. And so 8:44 says, ye are of your father, the devil. There's the word, the identifier. And the lusts of your father, the devil, you will do. He, the devil, was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks of his own, for he's a liar and the father of it. Now, do you think that Jesus knows Satan better than we do? He created him, it's his creation. He was an angel before he's still an angel, but he's not one of the good angels. He's a bad angel and leading other bad angels. But when you hear people doing unthinkable harm to others, just ghastly type things of assaults and things that they do, you know where it starts from, because the devil has put that in their mind and in their heart. And then finally, he's known as Satan, which is an adversary or an enemy, and he is the adversary or enemy of Jesus and any who believe in Jesus. And actually, he's the enemy of all mankind, because mankind is the creation of God, and he hates anything that God has anything to do with. But he uses man to his benefit, to Satan's benefit, to try to detract and pull people away from the Lord and service for the Lord once they are saved. So we're targets. You and I are going to be targets of his. I don't like it, and I'm pretty sure you don't like it when people lie to you, or when they use you, or when they misuse you, or when they take advantage of you, or when they attack you. Well, that's what Satan does, and that's how he operates, and he just that way. Look at 1 Peter, back just a few pages there from where we are in Revelation. 1 Peter chapter 5 in verse 8. 1 Peter chapter 5 verse 8. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walks about seeking whom he may devour. That pretty much says it all. He's trying to destroy not only Christians, but all of mankind, but particularly Christians, because we have accepted the Lord. Now, he can't touch our souls. He can't undo your salvation, but he can make life miserable for you. So this angel comes, back in chapter 20 now, this angel comes with a great chain and can change him up and confines him into the bottomless pit. Now, the bottomless pit is sometimes called the abyss, and the abyss is sometimes called hell. But is this hell the same hell that unbelievers go to in the interim? Not the final, but in the interim, the short-term hell, so to speak. Hades. Is it the same place?
Because the Bible's mentioned something about a gulf, and there's two different places that they go.
Well, that's talking about heaven and hell.
Okay, because I'm not sure which one.
That's about Lazarus and the beggar.
Okay.
That's heaven, which is the bosom of Abraham, represents heaven, and then the rich man was in hell. But these are on the same plane. In the book of 1 Peter, there is a word, and it's only used one time, and that's in that book, Tartarus. That is where the satanic angels that are in chains or held, that's where they're held. This is where Satan goes for 1,000 years.
Where was that? First Peter.
First Peter, I don't know, somewhere in First Peter. Let me find it here. First Peter 5:8. First Peter 5:8. All right, and so this bottomless pit, as it's called, is going to be his dwelling place for 1,000 years. Now, some people, you hear people say, well, the devil's in hell now. The devil reigns in hell. The devil's home is in hell. The devil don't want to go to hell any more than you do. He's not in hell. He will be in Tartarus for 1,000 years, or the abyss. But he's going to be not real happy. You can imagine when the angel goes to get him, he's going to resist and fight and curse God and everything else. But it won't matter. This angel will take care of him. So what is Satan's function or role now? He's trying to persuade people not to follow Christ, not to accept Christ. He's putting a lot of false religion out there. But what else is he doing for those that are saved, or doing to them, not for them, that are saved? What does he do for you or to you?
He tries to make you weak in sin.
Okay, he tries to tempt you. All right, he tries to tempt you. But he goes to the throne of God and he accuses you. He accuses you of being a bad person, of sinning. He's trying to get God to take you out, get you off the face of the earth, or to punish you. And we've got an advocate there, Jesus, and he's saying, wait a minute, don't believe that. He's one of mine. And so just remember, you know what happened in Job. Job was a righteous man. Job was, a wealthy man. Job had a good family and all of that. And what happened? Satan went to God and said, well, the only reason he worshiped you is because you're always doing good stuff for him. So God took his protective hand off of him. He said, you can do anything you want but kill him. You cannot kill him. What's the first thing he did? Killed all of his kids. Took all of his wealth. Just ruined him, And Job still was faithful. And so that story, that account, it's not a story, it's not something made up. It actually happened. That account is an encouragement to us that regardless of what Satan throws at us, we've still got Jesus watching out for us. It may take a physical toll. It may take a financial toll. It may take an emotional toll or many other things, but God still loves you, and he's going to take care of you. All right? So we've seen the demise of Satan earlier back in chapter 12 when he was cast out of heaven. Now, some folks today think, well, Satan can't go to heaven. Yes, he can. He's up there today accusing you of stuff. But there will come a time in Revelation 12 during the tribulation when he and Michael and the archangel and his forces go to war, and Satan and his followers are cast out of heaven. He can't go up anymore. He can't level charges against you, so to speak. And so then we see that he comes to earth and he turns his full attention and his full wrath against Israel and against believers. And that's where we get the tribulation period and those things. All right. Now, one other thing real quick. And I hate to go through this quickly because it's important, but go to the book of James. The book of James, which is back to the left there, a few pages prior to Peter, right after Hebrews. James chapter 4. James chapter 4. Look at verse 6, or begin in verse 6. But he giveth more grace, wherefore he saith, God resisteth the proud, but giveth grace unto the humble. Verse 7, submit yourselves therefore to God, resist the devil, he will flee from you. Draw nigh to God, and he will draw nigh to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners. Purify your hearts, you double-minded. Be afflicted and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning and your joy to heaviness. humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he shall lift you up. Now, what is that all really talking about? That's how to defeat Satan in your life, on a day-to-day basis. It's possible to resist the temptations. It's possible not to fall into temptations, but you have to do a couple of things. If you turn from temptations or turn from Satan, you have to turn to God. All right, that's where your power is. That's where the ability to do this. How do you turn to God? This is what I want you to get. One, you have to accept God as your personal Savior. That's baseline. If you don't do that, you're wasting your time. You're still one of Satan's kids if you're not saved. So you get saved. Then you start studying your Bible. Now, why do you study your Bible? It's so that you can grow and learn and become more educated about God's will and what he wants us to do and what we can tell others he wants people to do. If you go to lunch today after church and you walk in a restaurant and there's an 80-year-old man there sucking on a bottle, that's going to draw your attention. But that's the way most Christians are. They're still on the bottle. They may have been saved 50 years, but they don't read the Bible. They don't try to find out anything. They just go, I got mine. And they're just rocking along waiting for the Lord to come get them. We need to be growing. You grow by studying. You grow by praying. You stay in communication with the Lord. He wants to hear from you. If you were talking to your father, your earthly father, I doubt that you went in and said, "Oh, Father, oh, great Father, oh, magnificent." You didn't do that. What'd you do? Hey, Dad, what's the word Abba mean? God is called Abba. Means daddy. Means daddy. God is your daddy. He wants to hear from you, just like you like to hear from your kids. He wants to know what's going on. Does he know what's going on? Yeah, but he wants to hear it from you. He wants you to tell him what's going on bad, what's going on good, what you need, those kind of things. He wants a relationship. And we do that through prayer. But then the thing about it is, when you've got the salvation and you're reading the Bible and you're praying, then you live it out. And that's where James comes in. James is a very practical book on how to live as a Christian. And so you resist the devil, and that's how you do it. You draw closer to God, and that's how you do it. And things begin to change. And you're going to have to wait till next week to see what else is going to change. So we're out of time, okay? So we'll pick up there next week.
Nelson, why do people say that Jesus was born in December and everything after?
Because one of the Roman governors or emperors, and I can't remember his name, decreed that Christmas would come on the same day as a pagan holiday, and it was accepted as the day of Christmas. He actually was probably born back in September, October.
Yeah, well, he was born
But
6 months after John.
There's no
John was born in
record
March.
of the date of his birth, but most theologians agree that it's not December 25th.
Well, Tartarus is not, that word is not in the Bible.
It is, but it's Greek. It says hell.
Yeah, because
When you read it in Peter, it says hell, but this is the Greek word.
Yeah.
Okay, Hades is the Greek word for hell. Gehenna is a Greek word for hell, but they all mean three different things. Thank you for being here. Invite somebody to come back with us. Father, we come to you this morning. We thank you for this day. Thank you for all your blessings. Thank you for your word. Lord, may we want to study your word. May we jump into your word and study and try to show ourselves as workmen rightly dividing. We ask you, Lord, to give us the wisdom that we need. And we ask you to give it as you promise us in James, that you give it abundantly, and that we take it and we use it and we help others to see it, and we start living the life you want us to live as your people. This whole country has become milquetoast Christians, Lord. Make us bold and start a revival here if that's what you choose to do, that we carry your word to a lost and dying world. that we make a difference in this country and we turn back to you. Thank you for your blessing. Be with each one that's been mentioned for prayer. Each one who has come this way, we ask your richest blessings upon them. And if there's a lost one here this morning, when the opportunity is given, Lord, may they accept you as their personal Savior. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.